Here we go again, another podcast. And today it's only me and Nikita, but quantity doesn't matter, it's quality. So
It's the quality.
yes. And today we're going to talk about why product strategy is important and as well the importance of product managers in driving product strategy. So Nikita, you have a lot of experience as a product manager. You have worked with numerous clients, and as far I think as I also know, product strategy has been a main aspect of your work with them. So, can you tell me why do you think product strategy is important?
So firstly, product strategy is absolutely critical. It's an artifact that every product manager, whether you are junior and just out of university to doing it for 20 years, it's critical to have some skill in developing this artifact. I think it's also important per organization to define what product strategy is. And so it's not just some fluffy word that scares the crap out of your development team and gives a false sense of security to stakeholders. I think the most important thing is to ask the outcomes. What are we working toward? I kind of jumping the gun here. I know we're going to talk about some frameworks a little later, but I watched a YouTube video from Product School with the Google PM, and he was talking about how to keep on track, even though there is so much noise around the organization, the development team. And we do that by using our strategy, our outcome-focused strategy, measurable and realistic and achievable and stuff like that. Yeah. So otherwise, we're just project managers.
Yeah, I think I can relate a lot. Have you seen? No, wait, I will rephrase this. And what are the challenges, the main challenges you have seen with working on a product strategy?
Is that management like to pivot direction constantly. That is, I think, the biggest challenge in 10 years of doing product now. It's that the managers, they agree to it because they like the security that this plan gives them. But as soon as something new and shiny comes about, they're like magpies. They run after it, right? So the most difficult thing
this
about the
is
strategy.
Very good point. Yeah, I think this is very good point, and I have experienced the same. So, as a product manager, what is your role in that? I think we hopefully we should have a lot of influence, and we should be able to stop them from that. So, what is your experience like? What is your role in that?
I think it comes back to outcomes, right? That's the most important thing. So this framework that I watched the other day by this Google PM was really cool. It is the outcome solution tree, the OST. And I'll give you an example. Your outcome that you either devise yourself as a product manager or you get given to you within the organization. The outcome is, for example, we want happy riders, assuming our product is a ride-sharing app. We want happy riders. Happiness is super difficult to ascertain and quantify. But being a product manager, you want to make an outcome-focused roadmap that is achievable. So how do we make it achievable? We say, okay, instead of happiness, we say, how many 5-star reviews can we get? So that is the outcome. And then the next part of the tree was around identifying pain points, preventing us from reaching that outcome. Maybe riders are waiting too long for the cars. Maybe they're not comfortable if the ride is quite long. Or maybe, I don't know, the ride is taking longer than expected. Now, to be quite specific as possible and to make sure we keep the development team on track and the stakeholders happy, we can't tackle all those things. It's just going to be like a circus. So we need to pick something, again, that's tangible. Perhaps we could target short distance rides. We could say we want to reduce the waiting time that the riders have to wait. So in their minds, the perception that the trip is taking so long can be reduced. And then we could probably target that. Or if it's they're uncomfortable, maybe we could target very long rides and say, right, we need to make sure there is gum in the car, a bottle of water, some tissues, or you could ask the rider what kind of music they like, or let them hook up their Spotify to the car's audio system. So it's really cool how we can have this outcome solution decision tree. Yeah. So to answer your question, long story short, the way that we communicate and keep to the roadmap or the strategy is to make sure it's outcome focused.
Yeah, I think, I really agree. You mentioned something in the beginning that I found very also relatable, interesting, is that even if there is a product strategy, that product strategy often is being pivoted, or it's being pivoted too often.
Yes.
Because now there is something more exciting and more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wonder, is like, how do, I mean, the framework you suggested, that's for sure has to be helpful, but like, how do you convince the management to not do it, or like to consider it with maybe that framework, or consider all the reasons and why are we doing that, and is it tangible? Does it really matter that much? Should we change the strategy now because there is something shinier? And I have found that as a challenge myself when I've worked with different clients, is that keeping the same direction and not getting distracted by all the noise. It's the biggest challenge for me, and I have found myself repeating again and again the strategy and go over it, and making sure we stay on this track. We should not now try to explore something completely different. And if we want to explore something completely different, I think what has also been helpful is to go through a model or a framework to make sure we ask ourselves the correct questions to take the decision if we're going to pivot. Actually, I think that I kind of answered right now a little bit what I was trying to ask you, but I think the question is, if you have to pivot your product strategy, or if you want to change your product strategy, how do you do that in a conscious and educated way?
Okay, the first thing to note is that a product strategy is not a prescription. It's only a guide and should be very, very much dependent on looking at insights of how your product is performing and being able to pivot, right? So sometimes the pivot is for a valid reason, but it needs to be backed by insights. The second thing is, if there is a change coming in from the management, there needs to be some hypothesis associated with this change. Okay, some hypothesis statement and some measure of success that is usually backed by data. So if they can't bring that, then they need to put a business case together that shows why we need to pivot to this new thing. And thirdly, showing the cost of change. This is from my agile coaching side of I don't know what I do. It's like showing quite distinctly, there is a lot of published material out there from master students and universities around the world that show how expensive it is for a team to drop what they're doing midway and pivot to picking up something new and learning about that new thing, and then refining all the tickets and then putting it in the backlog and then waiting for a sufficient amount of time after release to look at the results. So also the cost of pivot. So those three things, not prescriptive, look at the insights, come with an outcome-backed hypothesis, and explain the cost to pivot. I think usually when you talk about monetary value, they back off.
Yeah, I think that works very well, bringing monetary value and also talking numbers and being more tangible. I think definitely helps. And so is there any tools or frameworks besides the one, any other tools or frameworks besides the one that you mentioned that you have found useful or you have used previously?
Apart from the usual ones like the Moscow framework, when it's a brand new idea, or the prioritization framework, that is so simple. I use that like constantly, right? So when something new comes in and they have a version or no hypothesis, or they have a version or no business case and no data. And it's like, okay, so what's going to fall out now? What is going to fall out of the roadmap if you want this new thing to be built? So just the basic prioritization. You can use like these ICE matrices and stuff like that to do those. So yeah. Moscow, the decision tree we were talking about, and then these ICE prioritization frameworks.
Mm-hmm. And when you're in a very early stage and there is just an idea, is there anything that you would recommend?
Early stage of, I think you have to go through a discovery phase before anything else. We need to flesh out, what is the pain point we're trying to solve? What is the opportunity we're trying to exploit? What does an MVP look like to get there? And then can we do like an overall T-shirt estimate on that? And then weigh it up against the other things on the roadmap or strategy. So the usual product management approach.
Yeah. So now I have a bit of a different question. You're a product manager consultant, freelancer.
Freelancer.
You've been you're a product manager freelancer. Let's say that instead.
I always associate the word consultants with some stuffy suit.
I agree.
With, like a fat, like playbook, giving it to the company and not like contributing. So I hopefully consider myself a lot more hands-on.
Yes, but I think that's just how the industry. I don't know, I'm losing words right now. I think that's how the industry created a persona around consultants, because I think the big consultancy companies they created that, and then there is this negative connotation with the word consultants, and I completely agree. I don't like it, and I don't like also using it for myself. I think it's time for a new norm in that, and I think consultants should not be perceived as those people with a guide that they come in and throw a guide at you and be like, just whatever, follow these guidelines. And but my question was more of like, how do you see companies benefiting having a product manager freelancer like you to actually help them out with any stage of the product strategy?
In general, freelancers tend to ramp up much faster because we move around so much. So we're just much more analytical and adaptable. So we can learn much quicker than the usual 6 to 9 month ramp up time of a perm. And secondly, with freelancers, you don't need to pay a massive package for pension and all these benefits. A day rate suffices. We are available usually on short notice and can add value quite quickly, I think. And it's the same with letting the freelancer go. So long as the contract is defined such that, the freelancer doesn't leave a massive gap when they go, they share the knowledge, they document, they coach, they set some principles, foundations, communities of practice within the organization before they go. I think you can let go of a freelancer quite quickly, right? I think the flexibility of it is unparalleled. And also it is a more modern way of working. Honestly, like the 9 to 5 and, having your permanent contract, it is much more modern and alternative way to get value quickly without like a huge investment.
Yeah.
And I'm sure as well with your contracts, Elena, it doesn't mean that the freelancer is going to be there for 3 months and leave. My contracts get extended sometimes like 18 months, which is about the same amount of time as a perm stays, but you have the added benefit of this person's like wealth of experience and super fast ramp up time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think maybe one thing I can add is that I have so far experienced and I see a potential that companies can be more analytical about their needs and looking at and I've seen this, some of my clients doing it, which have eventually brought in, or like that's how they also brought me in, but it's just that being very analytical and agile to their approach on how they manage resources, how they manage
Exactly.
people. Is that
Exactly.
for specific so let's say one case and I've had two clients recently like that, where they're working on a new product idea, and it's very new, but
Yeah.
at the same time it's such an exploratory discovery phase, is that they wanted to move fast, and they want just to understand, like, is this worth kind of
Just do some like
from the long
guerrilla.
run.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in this case, I think it's a smart choice of, like, we don't want to make a long-term investment. We want to, get an MVP, or we want to, like,
Exactly.
do the discovery phase. And so why don't we bring someone short-term
Yeah.
to look at it, and also, like, put a time frame that we want to do this for 3 months. Maybe I think that's the 3 months example. We want to do this for 3 months, and just try to shape a product strategy and a direction, and then take it from there. And eventually, of course, you can get extended because, um,
Usually it happens that way.
well, yes. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that you could, if you're analytical as a company and as a product lead at that company, and you're trying to make the best out of all opportunities you have
Yeah.
around, like outsourcing, or getting an external getting an external in-house, or um, building a completely in-house team as well, right? But being analytical and trying to find where is that I can get out this value and not spend too much resources and too much time. And I think that's the modern way of looking at this, or like thinking, and not always focusing, like, oh, we need to have FTEs all the
Yeah.
time for everything. But
The
yeah.
only the only challenge that I have on that point is that I have been permanent as well, a permanent FTE at employers, and it's pretty crappy when a consultant or freelance or whatever you want to call it, but that what you have described in my perspective is 100% consultant, because the consultant comes in and does the cool innovation stuff and then dumps a fancy presentation and then they go. That's been my experience. I've had that before. I worked at the Daily Mail in London, and there was an agency that came in and did this revolutionary workshop, and these guerrilla product hack growth idea things, without understanding the stack, without understanding how this is going to be implemented, maintained, scaled and stuff within the organization. And they're out of there, but now they've sold it to the management. And then everybody who's left behind as an FTE has to hack the solution together. So I'm very wary of those, personally, those kinds of contracts. Or at least for me, it doesn't like align with my career values. I want to be embedded in teams. I want to show product managers what like good product, scalable product is like. And that is like 100% taking the tech stack into perspective, right? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm very
it's a very
wary of
good
those gigs.
it's an excellent point. I completely agree. I have experienced myself as well when I was an FTE myself,
Yeah,
and I think that's a challenge. And I think, again, this is well, I guess we as freelancers, we have to help companies have better culture in that as well, and if they're going
exactly.
to hire freelancers, consultants, or that we help them actually make this mm, have this nicer for the organization, and actually done this properly, because it does not feel fair neither.
Yeah,
It's motivating for a lot of people in the company when that happens, and I
exactly.
completely understand and relate.
Yeah.
But and this is company culture as well, right? And so if the company is not willing to embed you in the team, because you mentioned that I would like to be embedded in the team, and I've had experiences where it took me a long time to kind of show or make the client understand that I can be part of the team and
Mm,
still not be on your payroll like that.
yeah.
And if the more I'm part of your team, um, the better the result will be.
Yeah, for knowledge transfer.
And I don't
And
know, like,
yeah,
why. There is something about the culture of that, and probably we'll find out. But there's something about the culture where some companies are like, we want to keep freelancers or consultants like outside, and
yeah.
they have to. And that's because if they're being paid per hour, they don't want to waste their time for some stuff
Mm,
and so on. But yeah, it's maybe it's just a completely another podcast, actually, something we can talk about.
I would like to talk about
Um,
that. Difficult
yeah,
management. I'm telling you that
yeah,
that is the most difficult part, navigating it. Yeah, I totally hear you. It's you.
yeah,
I mean, we can only go so far with our influential skills to try and convince these managers. But at the end of the day, the client is paying, and you can only recommend so much. So yeah, it's quite tricky. Although I try to avoid contracts like that. It really makes people feel badly with that are left behind. Yeah. So
yeah, yeah,
tricky.
totally. Yeah. So to finish off this, what do you think are the biggest strengths right now in product strategy?
I think we have a number of very cool tools that are available on the market to help us with strategy, to help us even make much more engaging presentations. I am doing some pro bono work for a small data SaaS startup in Copenhagen, and I'm using Midjourney to make the presentations a little bit more engaging in their pitch deck. So I think that's quite cool for product people.
What is it called? You said
Midjourney.
Journey.
Yeah. It's just a image generation neural network. Yeah. AI.
Yeah, Midjourney. Oh, sorry, I don't know why, but I thought mid, like with T. I don't know why, but yes.
Midjourney is quite cool.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think it's called AIagile.org. I think I mentioned it before. I met the guy Snehal that created it. It's basically ChatGPT that's been bastardized, particularly for Agile. So you can write user stories, you can make a roadmap from the perspective of a tech person, from the perspective of a product manager. So it does help to take some of the mundane things out of our role so we can focus on dealing with those difficult stakeholders and influencing people. So yeah, those are some cool tools.
Yeah. I have been just started using a tool for customer journeys, which is called They Do.
Okay.
Theydo.com.
Yeah.
Which is kind of very nicely visualizing like visualizing and also tracking the different aspects to the customer journey.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think maybe because previously I've done stuff like that in Miro,
Yeah.
but this one seems to be quite nice. It also has a similar interface to Notion, actually.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
something about like it's that type of yeah. But if you haven't, yeah, you can try it out. Maybe you will like it
Sounds good.
as well.
They do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just checking out. Like, do they have like an AI? But actually, they seems that they don't. So it's yeah, nice.